Hello, today is Friday, June 26, 2020. My name is Vincent Pena. I'm interviewing Elizabeth Villa for the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please note, Mrs. Villa, that this interview will be placed at the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at the UT Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 5 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. Voces wishes to archive your interview, along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. Do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Benson Library?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant Voces copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. You use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server. Before we send it to the Benson, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members. So that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson?
Yes.
On occasion, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact your interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Cool, so let's go ahead and get started. I should make a note that sharing your information or being willing to share your information does not mean you have to respond to said journalists or media if they were to ever to contact you. It's just in the event. Yeah, just want to clarify. Okay, so for starters, go ahead and just tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, a little bit about your family, and so on.
Okay. My name is Elizabeth Villa. I am I'm a mother as well as a teacher in my professional life. I have, as a mother, I have 6 kids. I have 5 sons and 1 daughter. And I'm also a grandmother of 2 granddaughters. Let's see, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 20 years. It'll be my 21st year in January. I've resided mainly here in Phoenix, Arizona, but I've also lived in California, Maryland, Indiana, and that's it. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll get back to your, family and your work in a little bit, but first, how did you first learn about COVID? And where did you learn about it, and what was your initial reaction?
I first learned about COVID mainly through the news, just hearing about, a virus that was occurring in China. And I have to admit, I am not one who really watches the news that often, but I did hear a little bit about this virus that was coming to the United States, that it was starting to happen here, and that there were cases that were popping up over here in the United States. And during that time, that cases started becoming more prevalent here in the United States. It was right about the week before spring break. I was teaching, and right before spring break happened I started hearing more about it. And so spring break occurred. We went on our break. We had a week of vacation, and it started to become more and more talked about amongst staff members, through text messaging, and then hearing more and more on news and radio. So right when we were supposed to return back to school, it became kind of like this feeling of, wow, if it's getting pretty bad, are we going to actually close our schools? And then we all got a notification that we were not going to go back to school, the day that we were supposed to return from spring break. And at that same time, my children, my spring break ended right when their spring break started. So then it became, okay, so I'm not going back to work and my kids are now starting spring break, yeah. And then getting information from both schools, from my school as well as my children's school, about school closures, basically, due to the virus.
Okay, then, so I guess at what point did you realize how serious it was? Was it at that point where, they closed schools down, or was it before that? When would you say you started really?
For myself personally, I didn't really take it serious until my school was closed. Then I realized, wow, this is really happening. This is a big issue. Prior to that, like I said, I wasn't real good, or I haven't been very good about keeping up with mainstream media. And prior to that, I really wasn't informed about the virus, and I wasn't very up to date, about what was going on in our world. But I do remember seeing stuff that was happening in Italy, China, and I actually look more at Instagram than I do mainstream media. And I have to admit, okay, so that I really did start seeing more through Instagram, through social media, than I did, just watching the news. So yeah, I guess I was pretty informed, but I don't think I took it seriously, honestly.
Did some of that, if you got your information mostly from Instagram, did some of the not taking it seriously have to do with maybe like memes or jokes about like the coronavirus or anything like that? Or was it just because?
It might have been because of some of the things that I follow, the profiles that I follow, that maybe teeter on, like a conspiracy type thing. But no, I now that I think about it, I do remember seeing it was actually kind of, like, I don't want to say fear mongering, but just it was very alarming to see, what was happening in Italy, and specifically. But yeah, maybe the social media did kind of weigh a little bit on my thoughts on it, just like not taking it seriously and thinking, oh, that's what's happening over there. That's not happening here.
So, talking more specifically about COVID, do you know anybody who has contracted the virus, or has anyone in your family contracted it?
No one in my family, as far as I know, no one in my family has contracted COVID. However, I do know of a former nurse that I worked with at one of our schools. She contracted COVID, and I know that she's a single mom, and she lives with her mother and her 4 kids, and she's a nurse, and she contracted COVID.
And what about so how has COVID generally, I know you talked a little bit about the impact on education, at least in terms of cancellation. Again, we'll get more into the education aspect a little later, but how has COVID impacted your children and your family more broadly? What has changed about your day-to-day life?
Wow. Well, a lot has changed because the kids are home. They've been home since mid-March. And it's impacted us in the fact that I really don't let them go anywhere now. We have limited ourselves, just our family. We've limited ourselves to my house and my father's house. And my father's 90. And so, I'm very careful. I'm very worried about him exposing himself, because he's a high risk. So yeah, life has definitely changed. We used to be a family that on Fridays, we would go out to eat, and oh my gosh, weekends, every other weekend, we'd go see movies. We would definitely go to the mall and just go and browse. I myself am a browser. So even like after work, I would definitely go sometimes and go to Target just to pick up one thing, but you go and you look and spend all your time browsing and just shopping. That has changed. We don't do that now. We can't do it. So our lives have definitely changed and been impacted by this. Yeah, I go to the grocery store, but now we have to wear a mask everywhere, which is very uncomfortable. So I hope I'm answering thoroughly.
Absolutely. So I guess my next question on that note would be, how are your children taking it? How has it been for them? Has it been difficult? Has it been, are they, was it easy at first, and maybe, as they realize it's gone on, like how are they taking it?
So initially, of course, for them, it was extended spring break. It was like, yay, this is great. We get another, and for myself as well, I thought, oh, okay, we'll be out for a week, another week, 2 weeks. No big deal. My attitude was the same. I was just like, oh, great, I get to stay home with you for another week. This will be nice. And I wasn't even really thinking. I remember calling some friends and saying, hey, I don't have to go to work next week. You want to get together for some lunch? Maybe let's go hang out. And I immediately started thinking, I have this extra time. I can meet with people that I haven't seen. And their first response is, no, we can't go meet with you. There's a pandemic happening. But yeah, the kids initially, they thought it was just free time. And then eventually after a week, 2 weeks, then it became, okay, we got to do some school at home. And, we can't go anywhere. They would want to go somewhere. Can't we just go to the mall? No, we can't. We're not going to the mall. We're not going, we can't go out to a movie. So then it started, like reality started hitting in, and we just realized, okay, we're confined here at home. And about that time, that's when things started to kick in with work, like what was going to be our expectation as teachers, because we're contracted.
So that's actually a good transition to talking about, education. Since you are a teacher and you also have kids in school, let's start with, how the education has been for your kids, first of all, and if you can explain how many kids you still have in school or at the house with you, and how that's impacted them, and what their schooling has looked like. If it's been on Zoom, if they've had regular interaction with teachers, if it's mostly on you as the parent. So go ahead and talk about that for a little bit.
I could talk a long time on that one. It was definitely a challenge as a parent, because I'm not their teacher. I am their mother. And so their initial reaction is, oh, I don't want to do this. And I did a lot of redirecting. They had to continue their classes on Google Classroom, which is something, fortunately, their teachers had already implemented. And so it was something that was already up and running, and the kids knew how to get onto Google Classroom, look up what they needed to do, and just do it. But to do it at home is a completely different story, because they're not with their peers. They're not in that environment, that learning environment where there's no, the distraction is limited, and they have their teacher that is, conferring with them and saying, hey, how's it going? Did you tell me what have you read? Asking those questions. Now, if I was a parent that wasn't a teacher, I could have done that. I've done a better job of that. But because I was also teaching at the same time as they're supposed to be doing their learning, that was a huge challenge. And just, it was hard. It was hard for both of my kids. I will have to say, my daughter, Sophia, who is, this was her 8th grade year, it was harder for her than it was for my son, Daniel, he was 4th grade. Daniel would get in there and he would do his math because he loves math. So he'd get in there, he'd get through his math. He'd get through the writing. And when the writing prompts they were basically prompts. So he would just have to write to it. And that was something that I could easily help him with. But when it came to reading, which he does not like to read, when it came to the reading, that was hard. It was really hard for him. It was hard for him to focus and get through it. And he actually didn't finish the book that he was supposed to read. Science and like she posted science work, she posted social studies work. Those unfortunately fell to the wayside. I mean, he kind of did a few of those things, but for me, it was just, I just kept pushing him to at least get the reading and the writing, and the math, at least get through those things. And then with Sophia, my daughter, it's middle school, it's 8th grade. So she had, 7 or 8 classes, I believe. And she was supposed to like keep up in each class. And man, that was a challenge. That was really challenging for her. And she needs that environment of, having her peers with her, collaborating, working together, bouncing ideas off of each other, asking for help. I'm a primary teacher. I am a kinder teacher, and I've always taught either kinder or 1st grade. So some of the concepts that she was working on, I would have to sit and watch Khan Academy myself in order to, okay, this is how I can help you. But again, I'm trying to do that while teaching my own class and then fielding questions from parents. So yeah, and I know that's another topic, but yeah, it was a challenge. As a parent, very challenging.
Yeah, it sounds like, just that whole idea of, you being their parent and a teacher, but not their teacher, is really compelling because they don't, they would listen, as I know from experience, differently to a teacher and authority figure in a classroom than you do you're at home, and even the example of them groaning, like, oh, and it's like that's not the type of instruction or authority they're used to from you. So I can imagine that's been challenging. And so on that note, were there any, especially for, I guess both for Sophia and Daniel, were there any concessions or like lenience? Was there any extra leniency from their teachers or any help in that regard? Or was it kind of was it like, here, these are the assignments and you all do them? Or was there kind of like, was there any option? I guess, how was that? What was their
Daniel was fortunate that he was already in an intervention program. He was receiving extra help outside of the classroom. I think it was for 30 minutes. He had a math interventionist that would work with him. So she had created her own like Google Classroom as well, where the kids could log on with her and ask her any questions, or she would post videos as well from Khan Academy or other websites that would go through skills that they were working on. Everything that they were given was stuff that they had previously worked on. They could not give them new material. They had to give them stuff that was stuff that they had already worked on, because it's not fair, to give them new content, introduce new skills without that classroom environment. So yes, Daniel was given those concessions. He was given that help. Did we utilize it at all times? No, we didn't. Once in a while, we would go back and watch a video or whatever, and you actually, I used it probably more than he did, you know, just to help him with some of those skills. And then Sophia, I really think that she had it a little bit harder because, I mean, the teachers were available for questions. They were there if you sought it out. Like, you know, like if you asked for it, they could help you as best as they could through, you know, through, I guess, a video conference or email. But no, they still gave the kids like participation credit, and they told the kids, you know, if you get through so much, they were still kind of, I don't want to say grading, but they were still holding them accountable. Whereas Daniel's, and that's elementary school, you know, they weren't being held as accountable as the middle school grades. So yeah, Sophia, she tried to get caught up because it was very difficult for her to get through. She didn't finish all the assignments, and she didn't complete things that were already late. Some of them she did, some of them she didn't, and her grades reflected. The end result was, you know, her grades were not that great. And it's unfortunate because she had gone through some challenging things before the school closures. So her grades had suffered for it. Then the school closed and she wasn't given that opportunity to bring those grades back up. And I know that had she been in the classroom, she would have been able to bring those grades up. So it really impacted her in that way.
That's too bad. It sounds like, you know, that they basically held them at the same standard despite not having to be held. I mean, these teachers, and I don't mean to like opine about it, but it seems like they were able to do less, you know, or maybe, I don't know, maybe not less. I know it's difficult as teachers, especially even for myself, you know, transitioning from, you know, in-person to online was difficult, but we also lowered the standards for a lot of the students, everyone, because the expectation, I mean, our standards were lowered, their standards were lowered, but it sounds like for Sophia that her standards kind of stayed the same and they didn't give any extra opportunity to remedy how difficult it was.
Right, yeah. Yes, but like I said, she had kind of put her, I don't want to say she put herself in that hole, but unfortunately she was already struggling. And so it didn't help her to be caught up in that, you know, with the closure and then the limited availability of the teachers and just, they were limited as to, I guess, how much they can help. And I'm a firm believer that you have to have that personal connection. If you don't have that personal connection, that one-on-one with that student, it's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So the last question about in terms of your kids, and then we can move to, you know, how it's been for your job and as a teacher. But did the schools outside of the education, did they provide any, you know, technology accommodations, or did they provide food? And did you all take advantage of that? If they did?
They did, yes. The schools did provide food services. Yeah, they did for everyone in that district, regardless of whether your child went to that school or not. So yes, they did provide food services, and they did provide technology for students who did not have access to technology. But we were okay. We did not take advantage of those things because we already had technology in the home, and we were okay with food. However, you know, now that I think about it, it would have helped had the kids had another computer, because that was another issue. We have one computer, and well, we have one personal computer, and then I had my work computer. That's another challenge, because then it became one child would be on the home computer, and then the other child would be waiting for me to get off of my work computer so that they could use that to catch up on their work. So So we should have taken advantage of the school provided computer, but we didn't.
Do you think that had any impact on any of that, like what you talked about earlier, or was that just another factor of the difficulty?
It could have been a factor, but I'm not going to say it's a huge. It was a big factor. It could have been. It could have helped to have both kids on a computer at the same time. One of the problems that I would find is that they weren't always on what they were supposed to be on. They were on YouTube and, games, and yeah. So I think that issue would have been the same.
It sounds like even maybe more computers would have been more access to distractions, if you will.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so then now let's pivot to I guess your job and and you've talked to that a little bit, but feel free to repeat anything you've already said about how it's impacted your job as a teacher. What does your job look like, and what did it look like from what were some of the challenges as you transition from in person to online?
So one of the challenges was contacting parents. That was the very first thing that we had to do. We had to reach out to our parents within our classroom to find out who had technology and who didn't. And then if they had technology, which many of them would say, yes, we have a tablet, but then they didn't have internet service. So that was a challenge. And then we had the challenge of language barriers. I teach in a district where it's not just one language. Previously, I worked in a district where it was predominantly either you spoke English or you spoke Spanish, and I could do both. But this district that I'm in now, it's very multilingual, very multicultural district. So we had people from, oh my gosh, I can't even, we had people that spoke Mandarin. We had people that spoke, Lebanese, just all kinds of languages. So that was a challenge. Many parents that are in our district, because we're an inner city district, many parents didn't have cell phone service when we were trying to call. So contacting parents was huge. And that was a big chunk of our time before we actually even started instructing our kids again. We had to find out this information first. And then it was the distribution of the technology to parents. And I didn't help with that, but they did, they requested anybody on staff that could help, they requested to go to the school and pass out laptops. Another challenge was once parents got the technology and I set up, because my classroom and in my school, we didn't have Google Classroom already set up. That wasn't something that we were already utilizing. We were utilizing a program called Class Dojo. And Class Dojo is basically for parent and teacher communication. I'm able to text. It's like a text message. I'm able to message parents, and it's used predominantly for letting parents know how their child is doing in the classroom for behavior. Hey, your child did great today, or look how many points your kid has, or I had to take away points. So we used it mainly for that. Well, now we were put in a position where we had to utilize something that we were already using for instruction. And like I had said, it was primarily used for communication between parents and teachers. Well, then I started getting messages at, like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, which I don't mind, but it was different, and it would be, and I'm assuming these parents were probably working. They're working evenings, and they need to find out, well, how do I access this program or website in order to help my kid do this and that. And they're just getting home at, let's say, 9 o'clock at night. And they want to know for the next day so that they can tell their kid, okay, tomorrow morning you need to work on this. So it was fielding a lot of questions, helping parents figure out how to access these websites, log in their student's ID, remembering their student's ID. It was a lot of repetition of that stuff. That was challenging because I'm sitting in front of the computer a lot. Then we got into the phase of instruction, and we were thrown into a situation where we had to figure out how to create slides, which I already knew how to do that on Google, but we had to figure out how to access curriculum through a website, create slides, record ourselves doing a lesson, and then putting it into this class dojo system. All of that was new learning. All of that, I know for myself, it was new learning. I was put in a position where I was learning and teaching at the same time, and it was very time consuming. So that goes along with my limited time and ability to just sit and focus with my own kids. But yeah, I was fortunate though that my district had decided that everyone in the kinder team or each grade level we all had, I think there was about 8 weeks of school. So each week there was curriculum assigned, a standard that we were going to focus on. And there would be 3 teachers assigned to those weeks, to like week 1, week 2, week 3. And you were to create 2 lessons from that standard and then record yourself and put it on your class dojo so that your parents could access it and the students could work from that. And mind you, I teach kindergarten. So that was fun. Kindergarten online. It was interesting.
I can only imagine how difficult it is in general, but having to teach, 5 and 6-year-old kids from a distance online is probably a lot.
I feel bad because truly, all they could do, what we did, the lessons that we did were all reading. It was all language arts. We did not do math. Math was basically, we gave them the objective, and we gave them either the Khan Academy video to watch, and then it was 2 websites, which was Zern. One is called Zern, and the other one was ST Math. And they would just get on those websites, and it's basically like doing math activities on an app, like an application. And it's not, that's great for reinforcement, but that's not learning. Not effective.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess it sounds like, and you can speak more to this, but how did your hours or to the total time you spent working change? Not just, I guess you already, being a parent during this time, you are automatically already working. As a parent, you're working every day, all the time. But for your job, how many more hours do you think you worked? And based on like a normal work day or work week? And then second part to that question is, did you receive any additional money or resources from district or the government for the increased workload? I know Arizona has a shoddy record to put it lightly, in terms of funding education. First part, how did your hours change? And then was there any form of help from anybody?
My hours really didn't change. It was suggested by the district that we set hours for ourselves, so that the parents understood that from 8 o'clock until 3:30, I'm made available to you. And that's when you would be able to call me, or not call me, but message me, communicate with me, ask me questions. I'm available, right? So my hours really didn't change. The nice thing was that I was home. So if it was something like creating these lessons and recording myself, those did take a long time, but I was home. So like for myself, I did those lessons at 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. I did them after everybody was asleep because I have kids and I have, people that come to my house, like my father, and there's just a lot going on in my home. So I would have to record myself late at night. So if you think about, I was working my contracted time, but then there were days when I had to work outside of my contracted time simply because of my family situation. I don't know. I didn't really work. I don't want to say I worked over, but did the district compensate us more? No, they didn't. We weren't given extra money, and but they did give us access to our resources. Like we were allowed to go back into our classroom and get anything that we needed, that we felt we needed for lessons, or many of us teachers went above that or beyond what we were expected, and we would do our own videos. And I did that. I would just simply talk to my kids and do, maybe some phonemic awareness type activities with rhyming and making it fun, like a little fun video. But yeah, we didn't really get extra money, or and I didn't really work over. I don't think I did.
Okay, I mean, I asked only because, like if people were, especially parents, are emailing you really late at night, I don't know if that was extra, or if that just kind of like if you're, working from home, if your work day, if that 8 hours or whatever you would work normally was just redistributed across the day at like more
Yes,
random times. Okay.
that's perfect. Yes, you said it perfectly. Yes, my hours were like redistributed. So I wouldn't say that I worked extra. It was just, it was redistributed time. So there would be times when from 8 o'clock to 3:30, maybe I'd field a few calls, or, communicate with some parents, but then I didn't really hear anything. I completely forgot about this. We still had meetings though. We still had meetings 3 days out of the week. And then sometimes my team would get together on, like through a chat or a Zoom, and we would go over things like, okay, so how's it going? How are your students doing in this program? Or what are you doing different? So I forgot all about that. But yeah, it was kind of a lot now that I think about it. It was just redistributed time though.
So then, sorry,
I
did you want to
just
say something?
remembered something else. We still had, just like teachers have to, we have meetings after school. We still had that. We were still held accountable for professional development meetings. And there was, with professional development, you usually are studying something, and ours was social emotional learning. So we did a lot of reading on social emotional learning and answering questions that they had given to us. I just remembered that. Just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, no worries at all. It sounds like it was part of another huge part of your job that didn't go away.
Right.
So I guess kind of answered all my questions about education and how it's affected you. So couple other things I wanted to talk about were healthcare, especially because this is a pandemic that greatly impacts people's health. how did it change? How has the pandemic changed, I guess, the way you and your family are doing healthcare? So has it impacted, you can talk about both the people, your family that lives with you, and any of your family, like sons that live outside or don't live at the home, but, so how has it impacted your ability to access healthcare, and or did you have any important doctor's appointments, surgeries that were moved as a result of things shutting down? So just talk about the healthcare aspect for a little bit.
So for myself personally, I haven't really been impacted too much. My children, thank goodness, have been very healthy, so they haven't been impacted too much. And when I say children, I mean my younger children. I do have my son Felipe, who is he has an autoimmune disease, and he doesn't live with me, but he's 28. He lives on his own with his girlfriend and his daughter, and he has an autoimmune disease. He right before all of this happened, he was told that he needed to go back on dialysis, and but we had all this COVID happening, and access to the hospital was, it has changed. And so he has been greatly impacted by this because he needs to go back on dialysis. He's already in preparation for that. But he's also, the doctors had already spoken to him about being a candidate for a kidney transplant. However, it's kind of, I don't want to say on hold, but it's kind of, they don't want him going to the hospital and putting himself at a greater risk because of his, because of his compromised immune system. So it's my understanding that, well, like right now he's being prepped for, I don't remember what it's called, but it's going to be dialysis at home, basically. And so he's going through classes to learn how to do this for himself at home. And he recently had to go and take a class and go find all of this information out. But prior to doing that, he had to go get a test. He had to get tested for the virus. And that was impacted, or that was impeded, because then he needed a referral from one doctor to the other doctor, and he wasn't able to get the test done when he was supposed to. And then it delayed his time to go to, for this class to find out for his dialysis. So he has been greatly impacted by this in terms of his health. And as far as the kidney transplant goes, he also has to take care of some dental work, and the dentist office was closed for a period of time, and they were only taking, telephone, or not telephone, but like Zoom conference type appointments. They've recently opened back up again, so that delayed that even more because he had to wait. But yeah, he's been impacted the most. My father as well, he's 90, and thankfully he is in very good health. But he too has had, he's had some appointments where he's either had to do them online. Well, he was supposed to do it online, but he didn't know how, and he didn't even know what online, he didn't understand it. So he ended up going there anyways. But yeah, I would say those two have been affected by it health-wise the most.
So then for your father, did he just not get the health care that he was like? Because if he had sounds like there's a little bit of a technological literacy thing going on there, and just he probably is not familiar.
Right. No, he was supposed to have done it online. He didn't understand that, and I was unaware that it was supposed to be online. Otherwise, I would have helped him. So what ended up happening was he just drove over to his doctor's appointment like normal, and they had informed him, well, you didn't have to come over here. you could have done this online, and they were very gracious, and they saw him anyways. My computer's about to die.
Given that there's these social unrest going on now following the murder of George Floyd in particular, and other examples and instances of police brutality and racial inequality. How have you been involved in any of those in any way in terms of protests or other involvement, and how has that impacted your life in conjunction with COVID, if at all?
No, I didn't participate in any of the protesting or looting, because there was looting here in Scottsdale, as well as, no, I believe it was primarily Scottsdale, which isn't too far from us, from where we live. But it did impact us in the sense that that's an area that, in particular, the mall is a mall that my daughter enjoys going to, and along with her friends, and that was just scary. It was just weird seeing that, and it's, I don't know. In the protesting, I understood it. I did. But I have to admit, there was a cynical side of me that felt like, why aren't we protesting for healthcare, universal healthcare? And I'm not diminishing what the protests were for, but my feeling was, this is great. Now let's get out and, let's protest for the children that are being detained in, in detention centers that are coming across from other countries, or, families that are being split. But that's, yeah, it just impacted me. I guess it maybe fired me up, but personally, but I didn't get outside and do anything.
So was that you kind of mentioned there, I guess you didn't, how do I want to word this? So I guess was COVID influence for you to not participate, or is it more kind of just not a lack of interest, but I guess what was the main reason? Did COVID have any impact on it, or was that something?
Yeah, I wasn't looking to go put myself in a crowded place. And my husband was working, so it would have been myself and my kids, and that is based on what I've seen in other protests occurring, recently with other protests, just the violence and the explosiveness of people's emotions, their reactions. I had no desire to put my children in an environment like that. So for me to go and protest, I would have had to take my kids with me, or the choice would be to leave them here at home by themselves. And that just, that wasn't an option for me. So it's not that I don't agree with their cause, and I'm not angry. It's not that I'm not angered about what has been happening for decades. I just, if it comes to the safety of my children and myself, I'm just not, I'd rather participate in another way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that's kind of been the tricky thing about these protests, especially during a pandemic, is, you, no matter what happens, you're running the risk of a lot of different things, but
Right.
I guess most prevalently right now is you run the risk of being infected with a deadly disease. And if, like you said, if you have kids, regardless of how you might feel about it or how passionate you might feel, there's a lot of more people that can be put at risk. So,
Right.
Like the involvement, being involved is understandable completely. So I get that. Okay, so that's kind of the last official question I have. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or share with me regarding your experiences with COVID that we did not talk about, or anything that you wanted to add about that you didn't, or you just remembered or forgot to talk about regarding, work, family life, education, anything regarding the impact that you didn't talk about?
I guess just a little side note. I'm finding it interesting here in Arizona that people are on either two sides. They want to be. There's people who are very strongly for wearing a mask, and this is like a hot topic. Does it keep you protected? And then there's people who are on the other side that are like, no, it's not going to make a difference. You're not going to, it's not going to prevent you from getting the virus. And along with that, I think about what this next school year is going to look like, because school starts in August. And so I try to imagine, what is it going to be like with 5-year-olds in my classroom wearing a mask, as well as myself. And I don't like wearing a mask. It's very uncomfortable. And I struggle. I'm a grown adult, and when I wear it outside, because I do, when I go, anywhere I go, well, it's mandated now, but I do wear it, and I'm always fiddling with it. I'm always touching it, or I put it down so my nose is exposed. So I just can't imagine what it's going to be like for 5-year-olds. And to socially distance 5-year-olds on a playground, in a classroom, in the cafeteria. They're all about socializing. That's how they learn. So I don't look forward to August in the classroom. And we just currently had a forum with my district where they were asked, the superintendent was asked, can't we just delay the opening of school? Can't we just wait until maybe September? But because of funding, we can't. We have to open up in August. And then it becomes, what are we doing? Are we forsaking the safety of our children and our staff by simply, by opening up? And then if we don't open up, like I said, it's funding. It comes down to funding. And not only that, we are going to provide online instruction. But if we were to go, because another question was, can't we just go online first, and then maybe hopefully this will go away by September, or numbers will go down and we can open up schools in September? But we can't do that because of the funding. It only allows for like a hybrid where we do some instruction in the classroom and some instruction online. If we go all online, we're not giving parents a choice. We're not giving them that option. So I don't know. I just thought I'd add that because we're in a really precarious time right now. And as a parent, I have to think about my kids and their safety going into a classroom, going to the school setting, or opting for online because I won't be here. I'll be the teacher, at another school. I'll just basically be putting myself in the same situation. And I think about my, the situation as a teacher and for my students. So it's just, I'm really concerned about that. That's something that weighs on my heart a lot. Just thought I'd add that.
No, that's perfect because, I think a lot of this interview has been focused on the impact so far, like in a past tense sort of way, or, how it's affecting you in the present. But, a lot of the conversations that, we're having as a society are how it's going to impact us going forward. Like what does life look like now? Especially, like you mentioned, we're hopeful that there's a quick solution to this. And I think we all know in the back of our minds that, a vaccine takes years to develop, right? And even treatment takes years to develop. And in the country as a whole, I'm in Texas, here in Arizona, the response has been absolutely not good, right? Even this, like, from the government down to even people who are resistant to do the safety measures that that experts are saying would help slow this spread. And so, that's actually the and with kids, who, I mean, like you said, it's hard enough for adults to
Right.
want to do this, and for kids who need and thrive on socializing and learning who they are and touching and being around other kids, it's um, surely like a huge hurdle that no one has a right answer for. And so I guess
Right.
another question I have for you would be, has your school, other than saying like, we're going on ahead with this, how have they helped you all prepare, or are they trying to help you prepare? What's that preparation for this fall semester looking like?
They are doing their best, and that was something that I really commended our superintendent for, because this forum was just last night, and I attended the forum. Of course, it's virtual. I attended the forum for my children's school as well, for their district, and schools are really doing their best. And of course, I'm an educator, and I applaud these people, because they really, I don't know if people realize how valuable the school system is and everyone that works in it, just how much they love the kids, But they did present some scenarios of what school might look like in the fall. And, like I said, masks will be mandatory. And it's either going to be a mask or it's going to be one of those face shields. It's been suggested and considered to put plexiglass on desks of students, as well as the teacher's desk. Not that the teacher is always at their desk in the first place, especially in kindergarten. I had to throw that in. But, that's a possibility. There will be plexiglass in the offices. When people are, right there in the front, the secretaries and all those people that are in the front, there will be a plexiglass. Parents will not be able to come in and drop off their kids. It's already determined that will not happen. They will have to drop off their kids on the outside of the school and wave goodbye. Imagine that for kindergarten and preschool. Then the same, for cafeterias are going to have to be like on a structured schedule, and there's only going to be allowed so many kids in the cafeteria, and then they're going to have to sit I guess 6 feet apart. I don't know how that's going to happen, but school's going to look completely different. It won't be, recess is not going to be the same. Recess is going to be maybe 2 classes out at a time. How that's going to happen, I can't even imagine. But they're talking about, maybe sectioning off areas in the playground where only maybe, like, say 6 kids at a time can play in that area. And then, oh my gosh, just how they're going to handle, let's say I'm a teacher, and if I happen to get sick, even just sick with a stomach flu, not the virus. Substitutes were already very sparse. It was very difficult to get a substitute. Now I can't imagine. I don't know what's going to happen. They're thinking like maybe raise the pay to entice more people to become substitutes. But who's going to want to put themselves in that position during a pandemic? There's so many things that they have to consider, and they are doing their best. And they realize that they're going to have to make decisions that not everyone is going to agree with, and they're not going to like. And there's people that say, let's just go all online, please keep our kids home, we want to stay home. But then you have the people, the aides, the support staff that don't have such a pivotal role as, I hate to say that, but they're considered non-essential versus a teacher. So what happens to them during that time if they're not being utilized? You know, how do they get paid? Do they get paid? Do they lose their job? There's so many things that they have to consider. I'm actually happy that I am not an administrator, because I would not want to have to make these decisions and have those difficult conversations. But they will be calling in teachers from each grade level. First, they're going to talk to us as grade levels about what school might look like, and just, you know, to collaborate and get some feedback from us. And then next, they're also going to be talking to us individually to find out, you know, where we are at. Because I was one of those people that said, is it possible, and if I can, could I do online teaching versus going into the classroom, mainly because of my father and because of my son. I'm in contact with them on a daily basis, and I have to look out for their well-being. So, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's so many more questions and answers at this point, and a lot of things. And I'm sure that's not even, it's probably just the surface of all the concerns.
That's
you know?
just the surface.
And so, like, that's concerning, because, you know, there's a lot to think about and a lot to, you know, there's just a lot there, and there's no way you could possibly answer all those questions with one solution. And so any solution that conceivably can be chosen would be imperfect and still adversely impact certain people. But, you know, in a school, I feel like the most important priority would be the children, right? Making sure that they are
Right.
least impacted negatively.
Right.
At least that's how it would be for me. But
Exactly. I did think it was interesting, though, that they somebody asked the question, how about observations? And that's still going to happen. I just had to throw that in there. How do you evaluate my performance as an educator when I'm thrown into this situation and we're all playing it by ear? That to me, well, we don't want to get on that topic.
yeah, that's I don't know how how that would be a priority, right? I think everyone doing their best at this, whatever that looks like, is
Can we just
all you can expect.
Can we just get, just skip that for this year and just give everybody a I don't know, just give us what we deserve. We're here. But anyways.
Oh, absolutely. Well, perfect. That was a great answer. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was not kind of involved in the questions that I asked. But so I have asked all the questions that I had prepared. So if there is nothing else that you'd like to talk about, then we can wrap it up. Otherwise, feel free to add something.
No, that's it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you.